welcome and good afternoon of DASICON Breakout Session 4. My name is Leonhard Hartinger. I'm participant of the 15th ETIA program here at the Diplomatic Academy of Vienna. And now in a phase of dramatic changes of the world order of the last 30 years, we discuss about necessary changes in agricultural policy to secure the fundament of civilization for the future. I'm very glad to welcome our two speakers, which are big professionals in their field. First, Kirsten Luxbacher. She's agricultural attaché of the US Agricultural Department for Central Europe, namely for Germany, the Czech Republic, Austria, Hungary, Slovakia, and Slovenia. And she works in the interface between diplomacy and agriculture. And I'm also very glad to welcome Franc Bogovič. He is a member of the European Parliament and a former agricultural minister of Slovenia. And he has big experience in agriculture, politics, and regional development. And yeah, we are very happy to have you as part of DASICON with your brilliant expertise. Together with forestry, agriculture is responsible for 24% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And it's also the main driver of the loss of biodiversity. And we need a very fast turn, both to secure biodiversity and global warming, because these two topics threatens global food supply in the next decades. So I would say you can introduce yourself. And my first question is to both of you: what's your role and what are your ambitions in this field? And I would please start with Kirsten Luxbacher and hope for a good discussion.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. And I'd like to thank the Diplomatic Academy of Vienna for inviting me. Before I go into my remarks, I wanted to kind of reach out as you are a diplomatic academy and let everyone know that being an agricultural attaché and an agricultural diplomat is a thing. I'm one of them. And in the US Department of Agriculture, through the Foreign Agricultural Service, we have a whole corps of foreign service officers that work in 100 posts around the world. But other countries have these as well. So I encourage you to look for opportunities within your ministries of agriculture and your ministries of foreign affairs to work as an agricultural attaché. If this is something that is, you're listening to this conference and you're really interested in this field, I would encourage you to look for opportunities. When I was a student, I didn't quite know that the opportunity was out there, and I don't think that a lot of people know about it. So I just wanted to flag that for you all. And if there are any US citizens listening, the Foreign Agricultural Service will actually be having a hiring round that will start in May for new foreign service officers. So look at usajobs.gov in May if you qualify, and maybe one day you could be sitting here at this conference. So thank you for that. I just, before jumping into my remarks, I just wanted to make a pitch for this career for those of you who might be interested. So to begin, the simple truth is that we have to eat, and farmers produce our food. We need to find a way to produce abundant, healthy, safe food in a way that causes the least damage, not only to each plot of land, but also to the global environment. We must do this at a time when the impacts of climate change are already being felt, and farmers and ranchers around the world are on the front lines. Agriculture already uses almost half of the world's vegetated land, and agricultural and related land use generate 1/4 of annual greenhouse gas emissions. The world's population is projected to grow from 7.7 to 9.8 billion people by 2050. Population growth, combined with rising incomes across the developing world, will increase overall food demand by more than 50%. According to a joint UN, World Bank, and World Resources Institute study from 2019, Producing more food without dramatic increases in yields would require converting nearly 600 million hectares of additional land to agricultural use. And that's almost double the size of India, or more than 70 times the size of Austria. That in turn would increase annual emissions by 15 billion tons of carbon dioxide and equivalent gases, far exceeding the 4 billion tons permissible under models that hold global warming below 2% degrees Celsius. Quite simply, we need to cultivate far more food on less land. But how do we address food security in climate change concerns? We need to use all the tools in our toolbox. There are no silver bullet solutions. We cannot simply categorize particular agricultural approaches or systems as sustainable or unsustainable. We cannot get bogged down in ideological debates. We must do the hard work of assessing real impacts and outcomes. Different approaches can yield equivalent outcomes. Research and innovation are critical for efficient, effective, and environmentally, economically, and sustainable sustainable solutions. Advanced plant breeding technologies are critical, not just to respond to challenges presented by climate change, such as drought and pest-resistant crops, but also to mitigate further environmental damage, such as less tillage, lower energy use, higher yields, reduced erosion, and less moisture loss. In the United States, advanced production methods facilitated by biotechnology, such as low-till and no-till planting, have greatly reduced energy consumption, soil loss, pesticide use, erosion, moisture loss, and greenhouse gas emissions while enhancing yields. Another production method includes the use of crop protection tools as part of the Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, toolbox, and this includes pesticides to address crop pests and sustain production of quality food. Since the 1980s, US soybean and corn producers have benefited from per hectare reductions of soil erosion of 47% and 58% respectively. Declines in energy use of 41% and 35%, a 46% reduction in irrigation for corn, and a decline of greenhouse gas emissions of 38% and 31% respectively. In 1969, US soybean production was 30 million metric tons. In 2021, US soy production was 121 million metric tons, and our total soy cropland is now less than it was in 1969. In fact, over the last 4 decades, total US cropland decreased while forest land increased. Higher yields have allowed us to increase forest land while still increasing production. The importance of sustainability is now recognized around the world. In the United States, sustainability is nothing new. It is a historical cornerstone of our agriculture. The goal is to maintain, improve, and preserve natural resources for future generations, while enhancing the quality of life for farmers and society as a whole. American farmers live by the saying, "We do not inherit the land from our ancestors, we borrow it from our grandchildren." Farmers, ranchers, and foresters in the United States have actively implemented sustainable agricultural practices since the Great Depression Dust Bowl of the 1930s. When unsustainable farming practices combined with long drought caused major economic, social, and environmental devastation in our Great Plains. Over 100 million acres of farmland topsoil blew away. Some consider it to be the worst man-made disaster in US history, ecological disaster. The US government stepped in to create soil conservation programs and to seek new ways to balance agricultural productivity goals with environmental stewardship and conservation. For more than 80 years, the US government agencies have worked with agricultural producers to make conservation improvements to their farms, ranches, and forests, while enabling adoption of new technologies and innovations that decrease resource demands. These improvements help clean and conserve water, boost soil quality, restore habitat, and make our rural economies and agricultural operations more resilient and profitable. In the face of the climate crisis, the United States is laser focused on policies that support enhanced sustainability across environmental, social, and economic dimensions, both domestically and internationally. The USDA is tapping into existing programs and has launched efforts to promote principles of circularity and resource efficiency, including conversion of agricultural commodities, residues, and waste into value-added products and renewable energy production. USDA is also supporting the Biden-Harris administration's goals of conserving 30% of US lands and waters by 2030 through the implementation of voluntary incentive-based conservation programs on working lands. Agriculture is an essential partner. Agriculture is an essential partner for reaching the United States net zero emissions goal. USDA has a vision for a climate-smart agriculture and forestry strategy that is farmer-focused, locally led, and centered on voluntary incentives, helping all producers build resilience, mitigate emissions, and conserve natural resources. In fact, Secretary Vilsack recently announced that USDA will invest $1 billion in partnerships to support America's climate-smart farmers, ranchers, and forest land owners through the Partnerships for Climate-Smart Commodities program. At the international level, the United States has signed onto several recent initiatives that aim to collectively address the climate crisis and food security. This includes the Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate, the Sustainability Productivity Growth Coalition, and the Global Methane Pledge. To conclude, like Austria and most other countries around the world, the United States shares a common interest in addressing sustainability, climate, food security, and food safety. As we develop policies to address these challenges, we must recognize that different approaches can achieve equivalent outcomes. Governments need to craft agricultural and trade policies that recognize different regulatory approaches can achieve equivalent desired results. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And I'm very glad to have both partners of the transatlantic community with us, and with Mr. Bogovič, one representative of the EU Parliament. And I will also ask for his presentation. And
yes. Good afternoon to everybody, and thanks for this invitation that I can join to this great project of Diplomatic Academy. Thanks to Emma Raschan, who invited me also. She is a moderator in another panel, and she had the opportunity to have an internship in my office in Brussels. So I also, as Kirsten said, offer some opportunities to young people to be part of this space of political world, which is sometimes interesting, sometimes strange, but it's very important. I will speak a little bit about European policy, and also a little bit introduction. You introduced me. I will just add that I'm also a small farmer at home. So not only that I follow agriculture policy, that I was Slovenian minister, I also have a small farm, and it's easier to follow from the practice to this political point of view. So all you know that common agriculture policy is the oldest common policy of the European Union. It started in 60s, when it was a time when in Europe we didn't have enough food for people. So the first goal was to produce enough food. At the beginning of 90s, we added in European common agriculture policy second pillar. This is called rural development, thanks to Austrian very successful and very important commissioner Franz Fischler, who bring this policy as commissioner on the European level. Since 2014, 2012, 20 is the last previous financial perspective. At that time, we also speak a lot about greening of agriculture policy, but in last policy, which we accept last year, this is the common agriculture policy in this financial perspective, and it will be in the years between 2023 2027 is still much stronger. These environmental topics are included in common agriculture policy. As we heard, when we speak about sustainability, we speak about all three pillars of sustainability: economical, environmental, and social. And also the common agriculture policy has many elements of all these three pillars. In this agriculture policy, it will be important that on national level this year will be accepted national strategic plans for agriculture. It means that it can be inside the framework of common agriculture policy. Each country can prepare measures, tools which are more tailor-made for them, and know that it's governments of European countries sent strategic plans on to European Commission, and in next months we will have 27 strategic plans. About a few words about this common agriculture policy. As I said, it's more green than it was before, with higher green ambitions, which are in relation with these big strategies of European Union. It means Green Deal targets and also Farm to Fork strategy targets. So in this, we will spend 25% of first pillar of direct payments for eco schemes. It means it's necessary that states prepare strategic plans in which this is included, and inside this eco scheme we have organic farming, agroecology, carbon farming, and also very important pillar of animal welfare. So it means that we also take care a lot about animal welfare. We also, at least 3% of arable land will be dedicated to biodiversity, non-productive elements. If they will have more, they will get additional, farmers will get additional money from European Union. In rural development, this means in second pillar, at least 35% of funds will be allocated for measures support climate, biodiversity, environment, and animal welfare. When we speak about environment, we also speak how to protect quality of water, quality of air, quality of soil, and all measures goes in these directions. It's very important also biodiversity, and it means that 10% of this money, which is in this pillar of environment greening, must be related to biodiversity objectives, which are part of this also biodiversity strategy. We speak also about fairer CAP. It means that redistribution of income support to smaller farmers, so that smaller farmer will get a bigger direct payments. It means how much they got per hectares than the large farm. There is also social conditionality. It's the first time that the social standards must be involved in this. People who must be ensured for people who work in agriculture. Otherwise, no CAP support can get. Convergence of payment inside countries, between countries. Very important pillar is support for young farmers. They are very important. We have lack of young farmers, and only 6% of owners of European farms are younger than 40. So it means very important pillar, support for young farmers. There we also speak about improving competitiveness, and here is very important also, as my colleague Kirsten said, about digitalization, about new tools, about new methods of agriculture, which brings more quality food, and also with less influence on the environment. I will conclude with this, that also we accept in European. I lead this initiative for smart villages, where we look on rural areas broader than just agriculture and forestry. We also speak about tourism in rural areas, connectivity in rural areas, how to fulfill digital gap in rural areas, mobility in rural areas, care for older people in rural areas. We speak about energy sector in rural areas, so that there is a lot of initiative in European Parliament, and I'm one of us who lead this, about necessity to prepare tools with which we will ensure that rural areas will be populated also in the future. During COVID crisis, recognize how important it is that people live in rural areas, that they have broadband connection, that they have built another infrastructure, and it can be also quality of life in rural areas. And I will conclude with this, that in Smart Villages initiative, we say that we must prepare the conditions that living in rural areas will be privileged for people. Thank you.
Thank you for your interesting insights. You mentioned very important topics like the steering function the steering function of the agricultural budget and for sustainable change. We got now some spontaneous questions from our visitors. One question is to Kirsten Luxbacher. I want to start with it. It's about the sustainable goals of the US in the agricultural sector, and she wants to know what role does organic farming plays in this respect. We heard from Mr. Bogovič the role of organic farming in EU policy, and there's a second question regarding the same topic. So I would also tell the question now. What role plays the idea of regenerative agriculture and this concept? Well, we can ask this question, the second question, then also to Mr. Bogovič. But first, Kirsten, I give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to answer the question. So organic agriculture is a production method that we support as USDA, but we don't necessarily prioritize it over other forms of agriculture, whether it's conventional, organic, or you're producing things with genetically engineered crops. All of those production methods are valid. All of them have benefits. All of them have, good and bad aspects that they contribute to achieving environmental goals. So I think a lot of times people see organic as a silver bullet. It's not. Right now, if we were to go to organic agriculture, we would not be able to feed the world. Right now, productivity of organic crops is 20 to 50% less than conventional crops. That's not GE, that's just conventional crops. And so if you look at that, well, how do you produce then enough food to feed your populations? You have to cut down forests. You have to clear land for more agricultural space. So organic agriculture is great, and it has a lot of really good techniques and practices that will help us to achieve some conservation goals, but it's not the silver bullet. And so I think in the US, kind of how our approach to regenerative agriculture is, how can we take the best from all of these production methods to achieve our goals? When you use no-till agriculture, we use GE soy and corn. And through that, we've been able to implement no-till agricultural practices or low-till agricultural practices that have allowed us to sequester more carbon in our soils, because they're able to just plow over they don't have to plow. They just plant over the previous year's crops, and that is building up. I'm not a agronomist, so, and we also have a farmer in the room who might be able to correct me, but that allows them to plant directly over those last year's crops, in increasing biomass. And that's the reality of those different practices. And there's other things that you can use, other tools that you can use to achieve environmental goals. And so we want to look at all of those. How do you conserve water? Which are the best tools to conserve water? Which are the best to increase productivity so that we don't have to expand agricultural land? How do we do that with the tools that we have existing, with whether it's precision agriculture, different digital tools, GPS, that allows farmers to put the exact amount of water that is needed to plant or to water their crops, or if there is a pest invasion, how do you target, so you only have to do the minimum amount of insecticide or fungicide or any kind of tool like that, so you're just putting a little bit of medicine to solve the problem not using it excessively. That's kind of what the approach is on our side. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Bogovič, I think I will direct the second part of the question again to you, the regenerative aspect.
Yep. Thanks. I will, if I may, I will add a few words about organic farming in European Union. We know that inside Farm to Fork strategy is a big goal to reach 25% of organic farming in 2030. This is the proposal from the Commission. In the European Parliament, we delete the figure. We said it's the right goal, but we also know we are in the phase of accepting organic farming strategy and regulation, in which we said it's necessary to think also about consumption of this food, because usually, as Kirsten said, it's lower yield, higher prices, and it's a problem if people cannot buy this food. In European Union, Austrian are a champion. They have more than 25% today of organic farming landscape of agriculture land, but in some countries it's just few percent. So it's diverse between countries, and as we said, we support that the consumption and production are balanced. Otherwise, if we will have overconsumption, for example, in France, is overconsumption of organic milk, and the price fall down, and there are other problems. I always say there is the very important principle and not or in these different types of farming. There is place for biodynamic agriculture, organic agriculture, conventional agriculture, and if we want to ensure enough food, as Kirsten said, it's necessary also to have quite high yield. Direct question about regenerative agriculture. It's very in some places very popular, very important, and it's a very it's included also in this when we speak about carbon farming, how to have higher percentage of humus, how to have rotation of crops, how to have on your arable lands also the place for carbon fixing plants like leguminous and other things. And it's there are many very good parts of this regenerative agriculture which can be partly included also in other type of agriculture, like using as I said, using and plant this carbon fixing like leguminous, and we will need less fertilizers, and also with rotation and other things, so that yes, regenerative agriculture is one of these methods which I think have a big perspective, and inside European Union Common Agriculture Policy, which support this carbon farming, is a special place for generative agriculture, and there will be additional money and additional opportunities for farmers who use this technology.
Thank you very much.
I would also add that the EU and the US are major trading partners in organic goods. You know, we both produce a lot of organic agriculture, and that's one area where the consumers in both countries really use each other's products, and it's a really productive part of our trading relationship is in the organic agriculture space.
I hope to bring this task for trading between US and Europe in our discussion at the end. We have now 3 prepared questions by students from the DA, and if you would be so kind to answer them very shortly, if it's possible, we can make these 3 questions. And I saw there another questions from the audience. So the shorter the answers are, the more people can have the answers that they want. I want to give the floor to Katharina Strubel. She's a student of the DA, and she will ask her question by herself.
Thank you, Leonhard, and thank you to the speakers. I want to know, also in light of what you both mentioned, in light of sustainability and also the growing population, if there are any ways how the already existing agricultural areas can be reused or used in a better or more efficient way, or if there are solutions to be developed, perhaps.
Who wants to start?
I'm not sure if I understand your question. Are you asking if the how they could be used in addition to agriculture, or if they were converted back into wildlands or things like? I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
No, that the already existing lands, if they can be somehow like they're used now, and I mean the ground then is derived also of its nutrients at some point. So are there somehow ways that the already existing lands can be reused, or also like in the context of sustainability and in the context of growing population? Because you both mentioned that we would have to expand the areas, and I mean that's going to affect everything else as well. So are there somehow ways or solutions, or I don't know what, to be developed or already in development to kind of we have and not expand even more?
Sorry for the short interruption. Can I ask Mrs. Luxbacher to answer this question, and the next question I will give to Mr. Bogovič. That would be good for a timetable. Thanks.
Sure. So I think having agricultural practices that, I think carbon farming is a hot topic in the European Union right now, but having farming practices that add carbon to the soil, when you're adding biomass and things like that, you're instead of depleting the soil with every harvest, you're actually regenerating the soil, regenerative agriculture. So you're adding biomass back, and you're storing the carbon, and you're ensuring that, if you plant, depending on the different cover crops that you would plant, then you are actually also able to add nutrient content back into the soil. So I think that focusing on farming practices that do that will enable the agricultural lands in existence to remain fertile for generations to come. And that's I think what a lot of governments around the world are trying to find out. How do we best do that? What works for us? I've told you what works for the US. You've heard what also is being done in the EU, but what is happening in other countries as well. Other countries have their own strategies, and also, sometimes agricultural spaces can also be used for conservation as well. You can have different conservation spaces within agricultural lands, or area reserved for. There's different conservation reserves programs that the different governments might implement. In the US, we have what's called the Conservation Reserve Program. So you leave fields for conservation area in conservation. Some US rice farmers also open up their fields for bird wildlife habitats. So you can combine different natural systems in that way as well. So it's just about being innovative, and I encourage you to look into some of the programs that different governments around the world are implementing to get different ideas about what's already what's going on, and then what could be possible in the future. If you have ideas for innovation, I think the world is looking for those different and new ideas. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We come to our next question by Carmen Hagen. She's also a student of the DA. I give the floor to her.
Thank you very much, Leonhard, and thank you very much to the speakers for your interesting remarks. My question concerns green jobs in agriculture. So first, my question is, what role do green jobs play for the green transition in agriculture in general, and for the policies of the common agricultural policies of the EU more specifically. And very much related to that is the question of defining green jobs. So although green jobs are often mentioned in various contexts, for example, of the NGEU, there, as I found, there is still a lack of a precise definition of what is a green job. So do you think a clearly defined label, so to say, of green jobs would be necessary, would be useful, and how would it be characterized to be useful? Thank you very much.
Yeah, very interesting question about labeling of green jobs, and there is no specific labeling or definition. You know, we speak about green jobs when we speak about the energy sector, about Bauhaus, you know, about building new houses, other things. But in agriculture, it's I can say as agriculture, forestry, at all, they are part of these green jobs. And if we add to this traditional agriculture, as we understand as production of food, I mentioned before this initiative of smart villages. And we try to develop this idea further than living in rural areas and be connected with some jobs with agriculture. I don't know if you produce milk and produce cheese, yogurt, direct selling, tourism on farm, I don't know, meat production, wine is as product. When you can combine this tourism and all together, it forms new very important jobs, because you have with the same amount of land, you have more jobs. But we can add a very important part of this bio-based industry and jobs which are connected with bio-based. If we come to forestry, it's about forestry industry, and then wooden industry as very important part also of this carbon strategies and other things. It's one very important field. New materials in agriculture, either you use materials from the forest, either agriculture. There is very fast debate, food versus energy, food versus other things, but these are many new opportunities in agriculture sector, and these are very important green jobs which we can create in rural areas. And this is the condition, as I said, that we all know that the farms are bigger and bigger. We have more sophisticated machines, robots in milking, other things, and you need less and less people to do this. But if we want that rural areas will be populated, we must create these jobs in rural areas, and most of these jobs are very easy to label as green jobs. Green jobs in renewable energy, other things. There are many topics you can connect, and this is the how is not the definition labeling of green jobs, but what it means in real life.
I'd even say farmers are the green job. I mean, that they are stewards of the land, and it's in their interest to make sure that the land is fertile and healthy, so that they can continue to generate income, because they're businessmen at the end of the day, but that their sons and their daughters and their grandchildren can continue to work that land. And around the world, farmers I've talked to around the world are so passionate about that, and we as governments have to give them the tools and allow them to use the tools to be able to do that and work that way. So I know that wasn't my question.
But perfect. Thanks for the insight. We have a last question, a final question, with the opportunity for a very short answer of both of you. I give the floor to Melina Schmidt, also a colleague of mine. Now here's your question.
Hello, thank you so much for your insights. I really appreciate it. My question would be, and you've already kind of mentioned it before in terms of trade interests and genetic crop modification, what would you assess are like the principal challenges for transatlantic partnership on agricultural policy, and do you think that the US and the EU can kind of reconcile their differences on these issues?
Lady first, or I will. Okay, I will try to answer. Yes, for sure. There are some differences between US and European agriculture. And on another hand, there are also some differences. I don't know, use of antibiotics, other things, that there are differences. It's also about GMO use. In Europe, it's more reserved about this technology, and but we use a lot of GMO soya, GMO corn, other things that we are honest about this. There in Europe, usually when we also accept these trade agreements, the basic rule is that we must respect our standards, so that food which arrive to Europe must respect European standards. Otherwise, it's not allowed. We know a big debate about CETA with agreement with Canada. We speak about Mercosur agreement. These are always hot topics because the agriculture is a little bit protected area. And I think that it's very important that it is protected, because at the end of the day, when we speak about security, we speak about free security. We recognized yesterday that military security defense security is very important. If yesterday we recognized the end also in Europe, because sometimes we thought that it's peace forever. Another security is energy security, and the third security is food security. And I think it's very important to respect standards, take care about your own security in the field of food, like other two security. But between USA and Europe, there are differences, but there is also a big trade, and Europe export a lot of very quality food, especially to another continents, and USA are the market number one.
Yeah, I would add, we are both very large, important markets for each other. And we do have a lot of differences, and there are a lot of really difficult, we're coming from different positions and different perceptions of, you have the precautionary principle versus the science and risk-based approach, or the risk-based approach of the US. So, we're coming at it from different angles, which sometimes makes these conversations very difficult. But I would say that we also have a lot of, the same goals. We share the same environmental and sustainability goals and climate goals. We might have different paths of getting there, but I think the important part is that we recognize that we have different paths, but the same goals, and that we need to recognize those strategies. And I would also note that DG Agri and the US Department of Agriculture recently signed a cooperation agreement to cooperate, to find areas where we can cooperate. There are certain areas where we might disagree and where we have to, negotiate and go through those processes. But there's other areas where we are ready to collaborate on solutions and find solutions now. And they're launching that platform, and USDA and DG Agri officials are working together to see where we might be able to cooperate on in different areas of agriculture to improve not only our bilateral trading relationship, but also the agricultural research and science innovation around the world. And I think we're both members of the EU and the US are members of the Global Methane Pledge, Aim for Climate, and we can really work through those international agreements to make a difference, not only in our own countries, but work with other countries around the world to find solutions to these huge problems that are, and crises that are facing us with climate change and food security in the world today.
Thank you very much for your insights, both this of Kirsten and the insights of Mr. Bogovič. I'm sure that with your commitment, we can much closer to solving these fundamental issues or problems. And we could have talked a lot more about free trade and regional development, but time is over, and I can only thank you very much. And wish you a good afternoon and lots of motivation for your work in the next years. Thank you.